started making these recordings to create some time for myself to basically talk through my thoughts. Sometimes when I'm listening to someone speak, I need to write to fully process what they're saying. Even if I never go back and read those notes, it still is helpful to jot down words. It's like it embeds it in my brain a little bit deeper. I'm reminded of, you know, historical kind of oddity where people who could read without saying the words aloud were considered weird or supernatural almost. Most people would put their finger or a pointing stick to the page and would follow the words and read them aloud. And they would process the words when they heard them, not when they actually saw and read them. That's the theory, anyway. Back in the 90s, I used to listen to a lot of radio. I was a young man, and there was a lot of interesting things on the radio for me. I used to listen to Hearts of Space, and a show that came on after it called Echoes, which I believe are still on the air. I used to listen to Coast with Art Bell. And sometimes I would tune into Loveline with Dr. Drew. He would take calls and talk about relationships. But one of the shows that really stuck with me for a long time, to this day, was a man named Bill Cooper and his show called Hour of the Time. Bill was sort of a proto Alex Jones. He was a conspiracy theorist and real big into shadow governments, UFOs, mysterious organizations that rule the world behind the scenes. He was a real big anti-authoritarian guy. He wanted everyone to join a militia and get ready for the inevitable civil wars that would break out, where we had to heroically overthrow the government or whatever. He was an interesting dude, and he was by no means perfect. In fact, he was kind of messed up in a lot of ways. But I do want to speak positively about him for a little bit. I genuinely believe that he wanted to help people. He wanted to free them from the shackles of oppression. He was also fairly level-headed in discussing certain things. He had within him the capacity to step back from his own emotions and talk about the motives of his enemies in relatively neutral terms, I should add. A lot of talk show hosts these days can't do that. They can't say anything good about the other side. It's almost as if they think that by doing so, they are admitting defeat. But Bill Cooper was able to talk about what, his secret society, his Illuminati was doing. And even though he opposed them, he could explain that they were trying to help people just in their own way, which he did not agree with. They want to build a one world order where some sort of governing body like the United Nations controls everyone's lives. He was able to talk about them and explain their motives, and that always made him stand apart from similar types of shows who would just get lost in emotion and could never bring themselves to discuss the motives of their enemies. I guess they think that people may take their enemy's side. Like I said, Bill had his own problems. He he passed away or was killed in a shootout with the police, basically. They came to serve him a warrant, and he would not go down without a fight. He shot one of the deputies that had come to arrest him, and in the return gunfire, they took him out. He was also a known plagiarist. He had this audio book that he read over the course of a year called Mystery Babylon. And I remember listening to some of the episodes and thinking, this is really profound. This is really well written and well thought out. Even though I didn't agree with everything it was saying, I could still, acknowledge that it was good listening, at least for me. And of course, decades later, I discovered that he was basically reading other people's books. He did have his own commentary that he would insert into the readings, but a lot of the passages that I thought, wow, that was a really interesting section. A lot of those passages were just lifted straight from other people's work that he did not cite or give credit to. But back in the 90s, you couldn't really fact check people on the radio as well, or as easily as you can now. You couldn't feed their transcript into a search engine. Not only that, those episodes, once you listen to them, it was difficult to get copies of them to listen to again. They didn't do reruns or didn't replay any of the episodes on the air. Maybe if he was sick, they would have a best of episode, or they would play an old episode that was popular. That was rare. To be honest, I probably only listened to about 20 or 30 episodes live. Sometimes I would forget or would be busy. Or I would tune in for a minute and just kind of lose interest. But years later on YouTube, I discovered Mystery Babylon and I listened to the whole thing. And that kind of led me down the rabbit hole of finding some very complete archives of his works. There's one on the Internet Archive that is thousands of episodes of his radio show. I'm not going to sit here and say that Bill Cooper is required listening to anyone. He had a singular mind, like many conspiracy theorists. And I always got the sense that when he was telling us about stuff, that it was the most important thing in the world to him, and he couldn't understand why others didn't follow it as closely or were as interested in it as he was. You see that a lot in those circles. A lot of UFO advocates or proponents say that there's evidence out there and they've seen snippets of it, but they can't prove anything. I can only assume that they are lying to try and get ahead of the truth. They think it's inevitable that the truth will come out, and they wanted to be a part of it, or they wanted to be the messenger that brought the truth to others. And they want to get out ahead of the story, which never, ends up never arriving. There's a magic feeling to being awake late at night listening to the radio. There's static, there's crackling and popping. It's a world apart from today's very polished, very algorithmic, very curated podcasts. Feels like sitting in a closet while someone's talking and you're overhearing their conversation from a hidden place. You almost feel like you shouldn't be there listening to it, like it's a secret that you're uncovering. I also want to talk tonight about AI. In particular, AI art. There's this strong desire out there for AI to handle the inhuman processes around us, to control the rigid and structured machines that sort of smooth over the difficulties in our lives, to take the place of the jobs that nobody wants, to outperform us in the things we don't even want to be doing. But when it comes to AI art, people grow fearful, they grow angry, they grow hateful. They can't really understand why the designers of AI would even dare to encroach on this. AI is going to disrupt a lot of people's lives. And in particular, right now, it's going to disrupt artists' lives. It's going to hamper their ability to make a living. And it's going to demotivate a lot of them. I sympathize with those artists. And I sympathize with those who don't like AI. But I think the narrative over the outrage and what's actually happening are two different things. The narrative is that these companies came in, they scooped up all this data from the internet, they didn't give any credit to anyone, and now they're raking in billions of dollars off of stolen work. And the creators are angry and they're frustrated. They shake their fists at it. You stole my stuff and you didn't pay me. That narrative falls apart on a few levels. For one, the average artist would probably just get a few cents for their total contribution to the model. There are billions of pictures in the model. and millions more are being added all the time. AIs are greedy and gobble up data. They're actually running short of data to feed them. The other thing is that there already are copyright-free models, and more of those can be developed. Companies could buy the rights to art and to photography and to videos and put them in their model and create a good model. And that isn't going to make the anti-AI people happy, though. They're still going to be frustrated and angry because they have to compete against it. And it's still going to get in the way of their dreams. You know, the truth is, art was never meant to be a lucrative business. Most things we do were never intended to be lucrative businesses. Art is about capturing pieces of the human experience, capturing fragments of light from the human soul, and capturing raw emotion and wonderment and all the feelings that art can dredge up from the depths of someone. AI art takes away something that artists feel is sacred. And in doing so, it cheapens it. And it shakes the very core of these artists, you know, to see this happening. It's an abomination to them. But truthfully, to most non-artists, they just don't care. It's just a tool. I am pro AI, and I am sort of a techno optimist, but I do sympathize with artists. If the existence of AI art makes you discouraged from pursuing art, then it's not for you. I'm sorry to say. No matter how much raw talent you have, no matter how good you are at drawing faces ever since you were 5 years old, if you did it just to make money because you could draw some niche or some genre that has a lot of adoring fans and you could fill a need, that's not really a career. It's not a career worth pursuing. Art should never come from opportunity or or out of greed or a sense of wealth and acquisition. Art should never be about you know pleasing the customer. Art should always be first and foremost something genuine that comes from within the artist. And I know that some people scoff and say, well, if I want to make a living at it, I've got to give them what they want. And that's a fair statement, but at some point the line between art and commodity, gets blurred. You're producing a product. You're not really making something that's meaningful and powerful to you. There's also a bit of gatekeeping going on in the anti-AI movement. We're supposed to do things manually, do things the old way. We're supposed to pick up a pencil and draw for 10 years until we're good enough to produce anything we want. We're supposed to practice and devote our lives to something for it to be worth anything. And they might not even be wrong, but it doesn't matter. AI is still going to replace them. I shouldn't say it like that. I should say AI is going to replace the need for certain types of artists. At that point, it becomes pure want, which is probably what art should have been all along. There's a lot of desire out there for people to suffer what I call natural consequences. Artists think that if you can't teach yourself how to be good at art, then you don't have the right to have that kind of art unless you pay another artist. The natural consequence of you being unable to draw is that you must then pay. It's a God-given talent, and they're going to exploit it. To me, I see AI as the collective unconscious of humanity. And it's capable of feeding back to us this sort of strange, uncanny valley, dreamlike recording of us from the data that we put into it. There's both fear and excitement over the prospect of AI generating infinite content for us. It threatens to devalue libraries. It threatens to devalue traditional media. It certainly threatens to derail niche and small community oriented media if it can be prompted for. Why join someone's Patreon when you can just generate images just like that person? Again, I don't mean to be harsh to artists. I sympathize with them a great deal. And I understand what they're going through. The truth is, everyone's going to be affected by AI just as much as artists are, if not more. Doctors, lawyers, construction workers, plumbers, middle managers, CEOs. In time, an AI will do their job better than they can do it. You might say, oh, they'll never replace doctors. Doctors are going to be one of the first to feel it after artists. One day in the distant future, an an AI controlled drone is going to drop a device at your house that you're going to stick on your finger or wrap around your arm or put on your head. It's going to give you a complete checkup in the comfort of your own home. And the AI doctor will appear on your TV or talk to you through your phone, give you a diagnosis of everything wrong with you. And it may even send the drone back with a pill bottle full of medicine, custom designed for you. And I know some of you are probably thinking, no, we'll still go to the doctor. The human touch is invaluable. But what happens if we find out that people going to the doctor in 2040 have better outcomes if they go to AI doctors? At that point, everything's up in the air. Only a stubborn fool would go to a human doctor if it meant a potentially worse outcome. There will probably be hybrid approaches, but even those may not reach the success rates of pure AI doctors. And at that point, we have to look at ourselves and say, for thousands of years, humans were the only doctors we could have because that was all we had, was a small group of people willing to dedicate their life to becoming experts of the human body and knowing how to deal with all sorts of situations that may arise. That was all we had. And now we have a machine that can do the same for a fraction of the cost. And it has better bedside manner. Unlike a doctor, it doesn't have a bad day, it doesn't get grumpy after a long shift. It doesn't make you wait for 30 minutes just because it's not ready to go in there and deal with you. There's a website out there, it's called the Library of Babel or Babel. And it is trillions upon quintillions upon a Google. It's really infinite text. Every combination of letters that you can possibly imagine. People have found the first page of the Bible buried within it. You can search for phrases or sentences or paragraphs, and you can find it sitting within there. Here's the thought experiment. Any book you are capable of writing is already in the Library of Babel somewhere, buried away. It may take you trillions of years to locate it if you're manually going through 1 page a second, or if you're processing 10 million pages per second. It may still take you billions and billions of years to find the complete book with no errors in it, but it's in there. You could compose a very powerful and poignant first line of your novel and then search for it, and you'll start to find it over and over again. And sometimes after it, there will be things that make sense. Most of the time it'll be gibberish, but every once in a while you'll see a second sentence, and then a third, and then a fourth. And somewhere inside there, there's entire works buried away. Infinite monkeys typing on infinite typewriters will eventually compose everything the world has ever seen. In theory. In theory. Signal to noise ratio is going to get really skewed. It's going to be a weird future, assuming we survive it. I'm a techno optimist, as I said, and my hope is that AI will improve our lives, artists and lawyers and doctors alike, and we'll have time to pursue our true passions and we'll have time to discover ourselves in the handful of decades that we're here on this earth. I know some people fear that future. They think that post scarcity will lead to humans being lazy and destructive and bored and hedonistic, degenerate. They think that we have to suffer at a job, we have to struggle to survive, to have any meaning in our lives. I like to think that we'll be okay, even if we get everything we want, that we will finally be free to chase after our dreams. There will definitely be a growing pain period that we're going to struggle with, but I think on the other side of it, we'll be okay. I see kids today using AI, and it makes me a little sad to know that they don't have to learn things that I had to learn. And it makes me worry a little bit, but then I think 130, 140 years ago, people were warning against becoming attached to electricity. What happens when it goes away, they thought? Your electric mill shuts down and we won't have any bread. Your electric cotton gin shuts down and we won't have any way to pick the seeds out of cotton. We'll have forgotten how to do the old things. And we'll be helpless as babes as the world falls apart. Well, here we are, 100 and so years later, still here. I suspect we'll still be here 100 years from now with AI. And I hope that we're all living our best life then. I sincerely want all the artists, all the doctors, all the lawyers, all the truck drivers, everyone to be happy in this future. And I hope that people make the right decisions at the right time. Some people think the AI bubble will bring about the end of AI and they'll be free of it and able to draw again and make money and their happiness will return. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to forge a new path and find your happiness in a new way. And it's hard to do that, but I'm hopeful that you'll have plenty of time and you won't want for anything. I hope I'm right about the future. I hope that it's not gate kept and limited and resources are denied to people and jobs are cut off to huge amounts of people. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope we as a species learn to love and to take care of ourselves. There's a Roman writer, I think it's Marcus Aurelius, but he says mankind has come into being for the sake of each other. So either teach them or learn to bear them. And I hope that we can teach people how to be better humans in this world to come. So with that, I bid you good night and good luck.